Good morning, everybody. We're going to get started. If you're on the wings, you're welcome to stay there, but I would suggest that you'll have a better experience if you move closer to the center. It is a very long room, and we do expect it to fill up today over the course of the day. So I would suggest that you move in if you care to, because you don't want to miss a second of what you're going to see today, because it's amazing. We're really proud to bring you the Science of Marketing, our Data and Analytics Summit today here at Fidelity's Center for Applied Technology. And I just want to give a big old shout out to our friends at Fidelity FCAT, because this facility is absolutely beautiful. And they have generously allowed us to use it for today. And they've just been wonderful in helping us execute a great day for you. So thanks very much to Fidelity FCAT. I also, of course, want to thank our wonderful sponsors. These folks are responsible for helping us put on today's event, as well as supporting MITX and BEMA all year round. Some of these guys are very, very involved with our organization. For those of you who may be new to the MITX community, MITX, most people pronounce it MITX. And we're a trade association, a nonprofit trade association that represents the digital marketing, digital media, and internet business community in New England. We hold over 40 events a year. And anyone who's been to a MITX event will tell you there's something pretty special. People get inspired at MITX events. People connect in ways that they don't connect at just any old event. There's something magical about a MITX event. So I'm really happy that you're all here today, and I hope something magical happens to you since you're here. We'd love to make sure that you get inspired today. That's what we're all about. We believe inspiration drives innovation, and we hope that you leave today inspired by something you heard or someone you met. Our sponsors are DataZoo, Experian QAS, Media 6 Degrees, Microsoft, PointRoll, and Visual IQ. Thanks very much to the 6 of those companies for being such wonderful supporters of today's event. Let's give them a hand. Yeah. They're also set up on either side of the wings of the room. So as you wander around and network today, I highly encourage you to stop by and visit with them. They have some really interesting things to share with you. And as you all know, sometimes sharing one-on-one is a much easier way to get to know and learn something. So I highly encourage you to take some time, meet with them while you have the opportunity. And they're here to help and give you good ideas. So thanks very much again to them. The Wi-Fi code is on your sheet. If you don't have a sheet, we have more up here and we will get it to you. If you are tweeting, please tweet under hashtag MITXdata. There are lots of folks that wanted to be here today who couldn't be here today and who will be watching the tweet stream. So you will be helping them out a great deal by tweeting your insights and what you hear today. So please try to do that. And then last, I just wanted to tell you that I know you were all waiting for my big data science joke to open the day, but I couldn't find one. So I'll be working on that later, and if any of you have a really, really awesome data science joke, please let me know, because I know that that helps to get everyone really excited to talk about data and analytics all day long. So instead of my data science joke, we're going to kick off the day with an awesome keynote from some very, 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 very smart, very accomplished folks in the space of analytics, and they're going to really set the context and set the landscape for you on data and analytics. We're going to welcome up here in just a second Jesse Harriott. He is a PhD, and he is the Chief Analytics Officer for Constant Contact. He also wrote a book called Win with Advanced Business Analytics. It was published in October 2012 by Wiley, and it is really one of those books that could be your Bible for developing and creating and executing against a very strong analytics strategy. And they're going to be referencing a lot of stuff from the book, and if you want to get a hold of the book, I highly encourage you buy it. And then second, joining Jesse is Dave Krupinski, and Dave is one of the co-founders for care.com, a wonderful online company here in Massachusetts that's just killing it. They are on fire, growing like crazy, growing internationally, and we're really, really proud of Care.com in this region for all the ways that they are showing and showcasing what our innovation economy here in Massachusetts can do by building such an exceptional company. Dave is also the Chief Technology Officer for Care.com and thinks a lot about their analytics strategy and is leading that for the team at Care.com. So on to Jesse and Dave, and I hope you enjoy it. And please let anyone on the MITX team know if you need anything or help or have questions. They are here to help you, and they are an awesome group as well. So feel free to ask questions if you need them. And then Jesse and Dave will also take questions at the end of their presentation. Thanks.
Okay, can everyone hear me well? Thank you for that great introduction, Debbie. Really appreciate it. And I'll be introducing this session, and then we'll be tag teaming throughout the course of the morning with Jesse, and he'll come up in a short bit to talk about some of the concepts that he's written about in his book. Let me start first. Let's see. Not with that. Am I going the wrong way? Okay, there we go. Let me start first with a bit of an overview for the day. At least for our session. As Debbie mentioned, we'll be setting the stage for what you hear about throughout the course of the day. And Jesse will start off by talking about the importance of analytics, why it makes sense and is important for your business. I'll then talk about the challenges that organizations face when they try to implement an analytics strategy. You know, the challenges that organizations face with analytics is often not due to the quality of the analysts themselves, but they're much more organizationally related challenges. And I'll talk about those challenges and some strategies you can apply to overcome those challenges. And after that, I'll talk about the stages, as you're overcoming these challenges, the stages that companies go through as they become more mature applying analytics within their business. Then I'll turn it back over to Jesse, and he'll talk about the success pillars. You know, the way you move through these stages is applying the success pillars of analytics, and Jesse will go into those in more detail. And then finally wrap up by talking about what you as marketing professionals should expect from your analytics teams within your organization. Let me start, though, by saying just a few words to set the context about Care.com. This is not a marketing pitch. I just want to set the context about who we are at Care.com and how we use analytics. How many of you have heard of Care.com? Okay, and perhaps some of you maybe use Care.com. We're the largest online marketplace for care in the country, and we are very data and analytics focused. We have 4 members of our analytics team here with us this morning who can back me up on that. We use analytics for driving our marketing strategies to figure out how efficient our marketing activities are, attribution analyses. We do a lot of customer segmentation, as I'm sure many of you do, cohort analyses. We improve the user experience by looking at what our users do on our website and trying to predict what might be interesting for them when they come back to our website. We use analytics in a lot of ways, and I'm sure the stories that you have are very similar to the way we use analytics. Have we figured it all out? No. But are we making progress? I think so. And just one example of why I think we're making progress. Some of you may know one of my coworkers and co-founder, Zinu Muchala, who's our VP of Customer Acquisition. Well, for quite a long time, she would come knocking on my door pretty regularly, with a little bit of anxiety about our marketing attribution models. We spend a lot of money on marketing, and knowing how efficiently we spend that money is really important to us. And she would have a high degree of anxiety. Well, earlier this year, we focused on building a marketing attribution model that we think now we have extremely high confidence in, and we think is a world-class model, thanks to the analytics team. So have we figured it all out? No. But are we making progress? Yes. I no longer have VP of Acquisition Marketing coming knocking on my door on a regular basis asking about the marketing attribution model. Is she asking about other things? Anyone who knows Zinu knows that she is. But at least we're making a step in the right direction in terms of getting our analytics processes further along the path of maturity. Next, I'll introduce Jesse. Jesse's the author of the book, Win with Advanced Business Analytics. If anyone hasn't read this book, as Deb mentioned, I highly recommend it. I spent time with this book over the course of the past few weeks, and it is a very practical guide to building an analytics discipline within your organization. Many of the concepts and frameworks that we talk about today come directly from this book. So anything you hear about that you want to learn more about or get more information on, pick up a copy of this book, and again, highly recommend that you read it. So let me turn it over to Jesse to introduce us to the importance of analytics.
Thanks, Dave. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. You're all brave souls to come here so early to talk about analytics for the entire day. I know sometimes analytics can be mind-numbing. We're going to make it not mind-numbing. We're going to make it exciting and interesting. We're going to talk about some frameworks that I think are going to be practically relevant for you, and hopefully answer any questions that you might have if we have a little time left over. So just to orient you on Constant Contact, Constant Contact is a company that helps small businesses engage with their customers and grow those relationships. And we're processing about 40 billion customer interactions during the course of every year. So you can imagine the flow of data that comes into the company that we can analyze is quite large. When we talk about analytics, some of you may have heard this. There's kind of a famous Target story on how analytics can be insightful. It was in the New York Times, and how many of you have heard this before about this story? Okay, so maybe a third of you. So basically, Target has a very well-developed analytical discipline, and they took some of the online behavioral data, and they tried to look at different customer profiles and segments. And just to give you some context, a father came in to one of the Target stores one day and was irate. He was furious. He asked for the manager. He said, I'm really not happy. I need to talk to somebody now. And he was furious because somebody was sending his 17-year-old daughter pregnancy emails. Hey, buy this, you're pregnant, so you might want this lotion or this product or whatever. He was furious. Target apologized. They said, I'm sorry, we made a mistake. Well, it turns out she was pregnant, and analytics was the way that the father was able to find out from Target and the analytics that they did before even the daughter telling the father. So what the lesson there is that analytics can really uncover patterns and provide insight that you can't get other ways. Another famous study was Match.com found, for example, that people who use Twitter actually have shorter relationships. Go figure. Make of that what you will. When we talk about analytics and the importance, I think there are a few things that are driving kind of this resurgence of why people care about analytics. The economy, right? The economy's lukewarm, recovering a little bit. We've seen some improvements, but it's still lukewarm. So there's that economic challenge that businesses have to grow and expand their customers. There's intense competition. Switching costs are low. It's very easy for your customers to go other places, and many of the options are out there. The internet certainly makes it easy to identify those options. So analytics really helps drive the importance of understanding your competition and what's going to be different or unique about you that's going to make somebody say yes. Also, the whole concept of loyalty is going away. Customer loyalty, employee loyalty, that is really an elusive concept. And so when you do have a customer and you do engage with them, whether it be through online media or some other way, that's a very fleeting interaction. And so using analytics to build that relationship over time is a big focus of many companies. Then I would say the volume of advertising messages. On average, they say that we're bombarded with about 500 advertising messages a day. 500 a day. That's an overwhelming amount of information to kind of process and filter and make sense of. And so cutting through that is a huge challenge, I know, for many of you in this room. And analytics is one way to help address that. So I'll turn it back over to David to talk about some of the challenges within an organization.
Thanks, Jesse. There are a lot of reasons why analytics projects don't succeed. Gartner estimates that 70 to 80% of analytics projects that are started are not successful. It's usually not because of the analysts. There are a lot of other reasons, and they're usually organizational in nature. The first reason, hang on.
It's a challenge.
It's a challenge, yes. First reason is weak executive sponsorship. Analytics takes resources from across the organization. You've got to make sure if you're an online business that you're capturing data in your production environment, that you're then moving that data to your reporting environment. Maybe you're joining that data with data sets that come from a customer interaction database like Salesforce or a marketing database. And you need disciplines from across the organization that are aligned in order to have a successful analytics project. If you don't have executive sponsorship, strong executive sponsorship, no matter how good your analysts are, the project is not going to work out. Second is the failure to align analytics priorities with corporate priorities. Analysts love data. They love looking for interesting insights in data, but we need to make sure that those insights and what they're focused on is aligned directly with the business. And that's why it's often important for the analytics team to be highly aligned with the marketing team, because the marketing team is always thinking about the business questions that need to be answered. One tip here is that when you're looking for analytics professionals in your organization, think about someone with a consulting background. Think about someone who solved business problems for other organizations and really has a focus on the business and not just on intellectual curiosity. Weak alignment from the technology support function. As I mentioned at the start, it takes a lot of different disciplines to have a successful analytics project. Everyone in this room, your IT departments are probably stretched pretty thin. They probably have a pretty long backlog of projects, and it's hard to get the analytics requests prioritized, especially when they're competing against requests that generate top-line growth or generate revenue. You need to have your technology function aligned with your organization priorities in order to get these requests processed so that you can get the data you need for the analysis. Next is lack of formal data governance. How many of you have sat in meetings where an analysis was being presented, a recommendation was being made, and then someone raises their hand and questions the definition of one of the key data points that that analysis is based on? For example, someone might raise their hand and say, hey, when you define those members, did you filter out the members who opened and closed their account in the same day? That's probably a story that my colleagues can relate to. And once you start questioning the integrity of the metrics that are presented that an analysis is based on, it then the meeting starts to devolve into a question, tactical question on definitions of data, and the high-level points that the analysts are trying to make just get lost. And you kind of start from square one. So if you don't have a plan for how you're defining definitions of data and thinking about a single source for the truth and a single group in the organization that is responsible for that source of the truth, then you're bound to encounter this problem and probably have a lot of fits and starts along the way as you develop your analytics within the organization. And then finally, weak alignment with existing analytics resources. Oftentimes when organizations are deploying analytics within the organization, they start by having analysts who are out in business units, who are not centralized but who are responsible for working with a particular unit of the business. And you might find that you have that across your organization, and as you try to implement a more centralized, coordinated, organized analytics approach, you need to make sure that you have alignment across all the analytics resources in the organization, that they're sharing the same definitions of the data and the same priorities. If not, once again, you're bound to not be successful with the analytics projects. So think about these concepts in your own organizations and how you can potentially apply tactics to first recognize these and then address those. Next, I'll talk about a framework that was developed by Tom Davenport, who's a visiting professor at HBS, where he talks about the 5 stages that companies go through as they move up the pyramid toward becoming really strong in using analytics in their business. The first level is analytically impaired companies. How many of you have been with or feel like you currently are with an analytically impaired company? Right? Every business starts here. Care.com started here. We were an analytically impaired company when we launched the business. We had a little bit of data, and we had some interest in using the data, but we didn't have any centralized or coordinated approach to how we use that data. But I'd say very soon, within months, we became a stage 2 organization. Yes? Okay. Which is an organization with localized analytics. And generally what happens, you're all marketing professionals. One of the reasons why you're here is because the marketing departments are generally at the forefront of applying analytics within an organization. And in this stage, it's generally the marketing departments or a group within the company that decides, hey, we need to invest in some analytics. We need to invest in data. If the organization doesn't have centralized support for investing in data and analytics, we're going to do it on our own. We're going to hire an analyst. We're going to pull whatever data we can come up with to answer the questions we need to answer, which generally are questions like what are your acquisition costs? What does your marketing funnel look like? If you're doing any A/B testing, what are the results of the A/B testing? But these are analysts who are not centralized and coordinated. They're out in the businesses. How many people feel like they're at this stage of an organization right now? Okay, a few hands came up. The third stage is where you become an analytically aspiring company. You begin to have some centralized executive support for analytics, and you start to focus on building centralized organizations and processes around how you use data. It takes a long time, I've found, to move through this stage. And at Care.com, we were probably in this stage for over a year, because a lot of times once you recognize the importance of consolidating your localized analytics groups into a more centralized, organized structure, you need to bring on the right personnel. You need to invest in the right processes, sometimes invest in the right technology, and it takes a while to do that. It could take upwards of over a year, as it has at Care.com. And then where I think Care.com is today is at stage 4, which is an analytical company, where we do have executive sponsorship, and we are actively investing in analytics projects and using that data to drive our business. We're not, however, yet at stage 5, which is being an analytical competitor, where everything is working like clockwork, like a well-oiled machine, where you have great alignment across all the groups in the company, and you're using analytics on a regular basis to drive real value for the business. That's where generally I think all of us in this room aspire to. And we work through these stages as we address the challenges that were on the previous slide. So now, how do we get through these stages? Where do we need to invest? I'll turn it back over to Jesse, who'll talk about the pillars of data analytics.
So regardless of whether you run an analytics organization, you're an analyst, you're an end business user, you're not analytical at all, this framework is going to be relevant for you, because this is going to show you some ways that you can gut check the analytical function in your own company or providers that you work with. So as we think about how to move from stage 4 to stage 5 that Dave outlined, there are several pillars of excellence that we want to strive for, or question, or ask, or at least try to understand how they're being addressed. So we start with one, which is the business challenges. Are the analytical initiatives lined up directly behind key business questions? It's very, very common to get into the intellectual curiosity, or while you're at it, I'd like to know this, or while you're getting me this data, give me this too. You really have to push hard not to waste analytical effort and make sure that you're aligned to the business challenges. Second would be the data foundation. The data governance, the quality control, the consistency, the stuff that's, to most of us not too very exciting, but is critical, like Dave mentioned, so you're not in a room questioning the data. You're talking about what the data means for the business rather than what the data are itself. So putting together either a data governance officer, processes, a committee. There are lots of different ways you can attack it, depending on the type of company that you have. Or if you're not directly involved in analytics, you can ask the right questions. You can be in the right room and ask that of your senior analytical leaders. Third would be analytics implementation. What are the tools, the systems, the ways that you're implementing analytics? Is it lined up with the business questions? Does it take advantage of the foundation and the key assets that you have in the company? Yes or no? Or is it more ad hoc, as people ask questions, as requests come in, it's like a typing pool and you do things and send them out? That's not the right approach. The fourth pillar would be insight. So how do you get insight from data? So when we work with analysts, we talk about a framework called FMA, fact, meaning, action. Fact, meaning, action. Many analysts are comfortable in the facts, putting a chart together, Excel spreadsheet, whatever the case might be. But you've got to get to the meaning. Any deliverable that you receive from an analytical team or partner, or you produce yourself, you should have the fact, the meaning of that fact, and then the recommended action. What is it that you're suggesting the business do? And it can be wrong. Oftentimes it is wrong. Oftentimes, as analytical professionals, we're not close enough to know what the right action is. But the point is you're making it and you're spurring thought. So fact meaning action to get to the insight. The next pillar to focus on would be execution and measurement. Did the analytics, made the recommendation, now what's the company doing? What action are they taking? Are they implementing something that you've created? Are they creating a campaign targeted based on the findings from one of the studies that was done? What is that action? And then tracking the results of that action. So at Constant Contact, one of the things that we do as a focus area is we try to find, we challenge the analytical teams to directly create revenue from the analytical insights. And so the team every week gives an update as to what are the projects or the key insights that they have uncovered and what revenue potential or result comes from those. So that incents the team to focus on the action, not the data. Next pillar would be distributed knowledge. So as you think about your analytical function, how's that information being distributed? As analysts, people who are analytical like to do the analytical work, don't always like to communicate it. That's not usually the exciting part for folks. So you have to have a communication plan and strategy, whether it's lunch and learns, newsletters, an archive, a knowledge portal, whatever the case might be. Then last pillar to ask yourself how you're doing or your organization is doing is around innovation. Many companies focus on innovation, but you'd be surprised analytical teams are not often seen as innovative. So how do you push your analytical teams to be innovative? I found the best way to do it is ask the hard questions. Don't go to your analytical teams asking for data. Go to your analytical teams asking a business question and let them figure out how to answer it for you. There we go. Okay. So as we think about key ingredients for effective analytics, just to summarize what we've talked about, meaning, the fact meaning action, context, what the data are telling you, predictive, looking forward with the analytics, making sure that you're helping the business understand what action to drive with a bias towards action, and then communicating that out. So with that, we're trying to provide you with a non-technical introduction to the analytical day. I mean, there are going to be lots of technical presentations throughout the day, but we thought it would be helpful to give you a few frameworks to kind of, help you think about the day and put pieces into context. I hope you found some of this interesting and relevant. And what I'd like to do now is, Dave, if you want to come back up, we'll take some questions from the audience. If there are any, we have a few minutes left. Oh, it was.
Yep. Right.
How did you find that extra push to get there?
Sure. So the question was about moving through the stages of an analytical company from stage 3, where you have the analytics aspirations, to the stage where you're actually an analytical company. And it starts with, as I said back in one of the challenges, with executive sponsorship. But it's got to be more than just the CEO saying we want to invest in data strategy. It's got to be real resources and commitment to investing in that data strategy. It takes, it's not a trivial investment. Analytics professionals are in demand. The technologies are expensive. Implementing processes across the organization requires that you align and you get other people in the organization, other key leaders in the organization thinking about the importance of analytics. It's a pretty concerted effort that requires a lot of sponsorship at the executive level and then just constant work to implement it. It could take a year to move through that process, to figure out the landscape of the technologies you need to invest in, to figure out the skill sets you want to bring into your team, and then get the processes right. And I'll also let any one of my team members here speak up because we're going through that process, right? And it's been a process that's taken time. So hopefully that answers your question.
Other questions?
I work in consulting, so I understand all of the challenges that you went through, that you display for the analytics. But one important thing, I think a lot of companies were not ready data-wise to have an analytical team or even accept the insights from analytics. So what would you recommend to those companies, the stage one, even before going to the analytical stage?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that, to summarize the question, what if you're not even ready to go to stage one, you're really starting out? There are, a couple of different tactics. If you're an individual analyst, there are lots of third-party data sources that can be used to answer questions in a way that the business will appreciate and show them the value of analytics. Because you really have to have that culture. If you have, for example, a culture of total gut decision-making, data be damned, I don't care, it's very hard to kind of overcome that. But if you use third-party data sources to put stories together that will help have an impact on the business, that can be a way to kind of nudge the organization. But as Dave was mentioning before, it's that executive sponsorship. Eventually you have to have that, otherwise you're fighting an uphill battle all the time.
Question over here.
In terms of incenting the analysts based on revenue or cost savings, which sounded like a really new, innovative idea, what challenges did you face in doing that, and how did you overcome those?
Challenge number one, they didn't want to do it. That was challenge number one. I think challenge number two is tracking, and how do you attribute whether there was an analytical insight that led to revenue is another, one of the hurdles to get over. But I think culturally what it does is it parts the sea, so to speak, of your analytical teams, where you get the people who really are analytical and want to drive the business will embrace it at one point, but the folks who maybe are more intellectual curiosity and they can't kind of perform to that level, you get to see where the spread of performance is. But I think the advice I would give is go right to the senior executive level, because nobody at the senior executive level is going to argue with that as a tenet of trying to have revenue or cost savings with analytics.
Hi, you mentioned the progress you're making at CARE on attribution modeling.
Yes.
And was wondering if that's all online or if that's offline also, and if you could elaborate a little bit more on that, because I think that's a big challenge for a lot of organizations.
Yeah. The question was about our marketing attribution models, whether or not it's all online or offline as well. Care.com, many of you have seen our Care.com TV commercial, right? That's obviously, we do a lot of offline marketing. And that's the biggest challenge, is how to attribute the direct impact of that offline marketing. I have to just give kudos to the analytics team that's here today from Care.com, because they focused a lot on answering this question. And they did regression analyses, time series analyses, looking at the spend that we had across our different media channels and the impact of that spend, and trying to parse out things like the impact of seasonality versus the impact of marketing spend, which are not easy things to parse out. The details of our models, I would probably turn that over to the analytics team themselves to talk about. But it was a pretty significant effort and a 3-week process of very detailed analyses, looking back at maybe a million different iterations of the model to figure out which model best fit the results that we saw. We believe now we have very high confidence in this model, but it wasn't something we got to at day one. It took a couple of years to get there. And then you have to run tests going forward to test whether or not your model actually is accurate, right? We have a model that we believe explains history, but to also make sure it explains the future, you have to design tests to test your model on an ongoing basis. And as I said, one of our biggest challenges was parsing apart the effect of our marketing spend versus seasonality, because what tended to happen, as we saw a peak season for our business, we also spend a lot more money. So were we just spending to accelerate that peak, or was it actually the seasonality itself? And parsing that apart was the biggest question we had to answer.
As organizations move through the 5 pillars of an analytical organization. How do you view analytics from either internally through an internal team or from the outside through an external consultancy such as an agency or a consulting firm or a standalone analytics firm to kind of help them grow?
Right. So the question is about potentially how do we use external agencies to facilitate moving through the 5 stages versus investing internally? My preference is always to invest internally because agencies will come in and provide point solutions where they're needed, but they won't be there on an ongoing basis to live with the results of those analyses that they deliver and also to test and modify those analyses going forward. We're talking about an attribution model. One of the key things of an attribution model is it's not static. It's dynamic. It will change. You can have an agency or consultancy come in and build an attribution model, and there are many great ones here in the area, but you need to continue to leverage that agency if you want that model to continue to explain your business, and that can be a very expensive proposition. There are again lots of consultancies in the area who have done this. They've done it very well, but businesses become reliant upon those consultancies, and being as a core competency, I view it more important to bring the expertise in-house. It depends the level at which you think analytics is a core competency for your business.
And I would just add to that, which is you bring up a key point, which is the war for talent, analytical talent. It's very hard to find analytical talent. So although I agree completely, the agency can be expensive. Sometimes you can go with like a staff augmentation company where it's not a full agency. You're not paying that full agency fee. Agencies are phenomenal, by the way, but I think that you can do staff augmentation where you just hire in 4 or 5 analytical folks, and they can help you build through some of those stages.
When you're not with a big company like Constant Contact and Care.com, and you're in a mid-sized company and you have whet the appetite of the executive team for analytics, and then you open the door in Pandora's box so that they want to measure everything, even if it does not be aligned with a business strategy. How do you keep them in check without putting your budget in danger and keep the marketing operations itself going?
It's difficult. I mean, that you hit the nail on the head of one of the key challenges, but focus them on the actions that are going to come from the data. So I think it's perfectly legitimate if they have a list of 20 things they want to know or facts or analyses they want done. You can even play sort of ignorant about it and say, well, can you help me understand what actions are going to be taken from this particular piece? What actions are going to be taken from this particular project? So doing that can get away from the all-you-can-eat buffet phenomenon that analytical teams kind of go through. And so I would encourage you just to push that fact, meaning, action paradigm, even with the senior leaders.
And I'll add one thing to that, which is transparency. Care.com was not always a big company, right? We started small. We are always with more things to do than we have resources to do them. And a key important point that I think has helped us is transparency. We run a process where all the folks who are making requests of the analytics team come together on a weekly basis, and they have their list. And we look at that list, and we look at our resources, and we say, okay, here are the things that can be delivered. And it's a transparent process. Do people walk away happy every week? No. Usually they walk away fairly unhappy because they're not getting all the requests processed. But they know the amount of resources we have in the business, and they know how we're using those resources. And if we need more resources, you always need more resources, but it's a question of whether or not you make that investment in those resources based upon the value you're going to derive for the business. And some of these folks who come to the meeting are business owners with their own budget and can allocate that budget toward more analytics if they believe it's that important. But transparency of the throughput that we have within the group is very important. Question down here?
When talking about the fact, meaning, action paradigm, the challenge in finding meaning, do you tend to focus more on what are the problems, or do you tend to focus on the bright spots and finding what is actually working and executing more on what's working?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the fact, meaning, action paradigm assumes that you start with a key business question that you're trying to answer, so you're always tying back to that. But focusing on the opportunities is much more, I think, exciting and where analytics can add value as opposed to pointing out the problems and challenges. But it certainly depends. I mean, if your question is which online media channel is most efficient for us, that's a totally different question that's going to lead to a way you approach the analytics, the fact, meaning, action, versus we have an internal process in the company that services customers for this particular issue. Is that too expensive? Are we using the resources efficiently? Help us analyze that. That's a different kind of. So it ties back to the business question. Really, is how you drive whether you focus on opportunities or challenges.
There was a question down here.
So as you know, MITX deals with a lot of smaller companies, often in the startup stage. So I was just wondering if you had any suggestions for a smaller company where funding is a little bit tighter and they realize that these analytics are important, but everybody's kind of doing it on the side in addition to their daily job. If they're good systems, Excel only does so much, or kind of suggestions you have as to how they can get started before they have the capability of hiring a full-time person?
Yeah, I'd say, at Care.com, we went for a long time without hiring full-time analysts. Most of the analytics was done in the early days within the marketing department itself. And as an engineering team, as a technology team, we were doing our best to make the data available. And then hiring and I think this is characteristic of a startup, you want to hire folks who are very multidisciplinary. They're not specialists, but they can wear a lot of hats. And we focused on that early at Care.com, hiring folks who could be, who were very strong analysts as well as marketers. And in fact, those kind of go hand in hand today when you're thinking about digital marketing. And with the data resources that we were able to make available, they did an incredible job of drawing insight from those. And then as we grew, we were able to invest on a more dedicated basis on analytics professionals. But it's looking for people who can wear lots of different hats and be analytical as well as focused on marketing success.
And just to build on that, there are a lot of open source tools that if you have somebody who is fairly talented, that can take advantage of them. R certainly is the one that everyone knows about. But partnering with a master's program, finding a student who is doing a lot of this work on his or her own and wants to work with your startup organization is another way to go. And the tools themselves are open source, and so you can make a lot of progress just with those. But what I will say is I know we're out of time. We've extended the time a little bit, so I just want to thank everybody for their attention this morning, and we hope to talk with you throughout the day.
Awesome, right? Such a good start to the day. I'm very excited. I realized I forgot to introduce myself at the beginning. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Debbie Kleiman. I'm the president of MITX and your MC for the day. I thought that was a stellar start to the day. And as I mentioned before, Jesse wrote a book called Win with Advanced Business Analytics, and I encourage you guys to check it out if you want to learn more about the frameworks and the strategies they presented today. But I also just think how incredible it is to have these very, very smart people from Constant Contact and Care.com, both extremely successful companies and analytic-driven companies who are here today to share their insights with us. So thank you again, Jesse. Thank you again, Dave. It was really wonderful.